here's a Scared for Real's Legacy Special.
Hey, it's Chris O'Neill.
And Adam Perry.
We lost an icon last week, Roger Corman, 98 years old, and what an amazing legacy of films, not only directing, but producing. He distributed, and gosh, he did it all.
He was the Pope of pop cinema. He's the king of cults.
Yeah.
You know,
add any nickname you want.
Yeah.
The guy was like a genre unto himself almost.
Yeah. He really created his own style, and no one since and probably ever will do it quite like Roger Corman did.
No.
You know, it's a sad day in the genre, but I mean, 98 years old, man, that's one hell of a run.
Oh, exactly.
And, God bless him, and you know, he gave us so much, and you know,
he's still influencing people today.
Yeah, and his movies are still being talked about and produced. As we talked a couple weeks ago off air, his Fantastic Four is being petitioned to be released.
Right.
That was squashed, and so I mean, like, he's still relevant today. And
oh, absolutely.
I mean, you
see all of his techniques and shots and everything in a lot of today's movies.
Sure.
It's just amazing. And who would have thought a guy born in Detroit, Michigan, to an engineer would end up being like an icon in cinema?
Yeah.
But his younger brother collaborated with him sometimes. He actually went to school, Beverly Hills High School, and then to Stanford University to study industrial engineering, just like his father. Mm. But while he was at Stanford, he came to the conclusion he did not want to be an engineer, thank God. He enlisted in the V-12 Navy College training program with 6 months of study to complete. And he did serve in the Navy from 44 to 46. So he did serve our country. Then he returned to Stanford to finish his degree. And he did get his BS in industrial engineering. So, and I know he
smart man.
Yeah, this guy was really smart for sure. Yeah. In 1948, he worked briefly at the U.S. Electric Motors in L.A., but it only lasted for 4 days.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a brief moment in his career. He goes, I've made a terrible mistake, he told his boss, and then he found work at 20th Century Fox as a messenger in the mailroom, earning $32.50 a week. Now, one thing that the bio leaves off here is the fact that him and his brother would used to go to the movies by themselves, like 9-10 years old, and he apparently loved every movie he saw.
Wow.
He apparently loved every movie he saw. So he worked his way up to a story reader. The one property that he liked the most and provided ideas for was a movie. This is a very significant film, too. You probably haven't seen it. I know you're not a huge Western fan, but I highly recommend, if you're going to watch any Western from the early 50s, they made some real interesting movies. Because if you take a look at his very first film, there's a lot of Bud Boetticher influence in his work, and we'll get to that in a minute. But he actually provided ideas for the script. It was The Gunfighter with Gregory Peck. He received no credit at all. He got really upset about that, actually, because, you know, like a supervisor or a boss, he'll take his minions' ideas and then pass it off on his own.
Yeah.
And Corman just got so frustrated with that, and he left. He didn't want. I don't blame him.
No, I don't.
Kind of a big risk, though, if you want to be in film, to just walk off. But man, that movie is really impressive. You think The Gunfighter, you think there's nonstop violence and fights, but it's actually a very moody piece, and there's not a lot of the gunfighting is sparse in that movie, but it's very taut and it's very tight, and I think it's less than an hour and a half.
Right.
Like all of his movies, I mean, his movies were not like long. You know what I mean? And they weren't meant to be, and we'll get to that in a minute too. But The Gunfighter, if you get a chance to see it, Adam, when I saw it one time, in like most of the movies I've grown to love, I stumbled across it by accident just watching Turner Classic Movies. And I was expecting, Gregory Peck, a Western. Oh, I'll give it a shot. Sounds like it might be fun. But it totally was not like the typical Western at the time. There was a lot of layers to it, and there was it was a very interesting, complex role for Gregory Peck. He was a gunfighter. He was considered the best of the West, but there was a lot of heavy burden with that, and you could kind of feel it. Gregory Peck's character was trying to hide it, but you could feel the burden and, just the heavy lies the crown kind of thing, because it's like someday somebody will beat him, he's worried about that. So I don't want to ruin it for you if you get a chance. The Gunfighter is amazing. And I mean, I've seen a lot of Corman movies of late just because I haven't delved into his filmography, and he's made some interesting movies. So
many movies to.
So after he quit Fox, he decided he would work in film by himself. And under the GI Bill, Corman studied English literature at the University of Oxford and lived in Paris for some time. He then returned to L.A., tried to reestablish himself in the film industry. He took various jobs, and he actually raised. He used his script fees and stuff that he did with the Gunfighter. He used that in his personal contacts to raise $12,000 to produce his very first film, The Monster from the Ocean Floor. I guess he had his own company, Palo Alto. The film did well enough to encourage Corman to produce another film, and it was The Fast and the Furious. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. The guy who really, really enjoyed the Fast and Furious franchise, the guy who went on to direct that, he apparently talked to Universal, and Roger Corman literally sold the name to Universal, and I'm sure he made some big bucks in the. Because look at there's 10 Fast and Furious movies now. Yeah, it's lasted for it's a legacy in itself of over 20 years. Yeah, not all of them are good, but.
Well, listen, if there's one thing Roger Corman knew how to do was make money. Oh, so yeah. I'm sure he made bank on licensing that name, and, I can only imagine what he, if he got royalties or not, how much he made.
Right. So the film, The Fast and the Furious, which, again, spawned a franchise in the 21st century, but he decided to direct his own movie. I guess that when he was directing or producing some of these films, some of the directors were less than stellar, especially with the Monster from the Ocean Floor. So his very first film, and it was actually the first film I watched when I started my Roger Corman binge here, Five Guns West. It was made in color, $60,000. And he actually had Oscar-winning actress Dorothy Malone in there, she was a pretty prominent name at the time. More of a character actress. She wasn't like a lead, but she was the main character in this film. And it had a Bud Whitaker kind of feel to it. There was, the grand, vast, open range of the West. It wasn't as Technicolor driven. He didn't have the budget of a Bud Whitaker kind of movie, but it had the vibe to it, right? Because there's a lot bubbling underneath the surface of those Randolph Scott westerns. I don't know if you ever watched them, but there was a lot of stuff going on underneath the surface, and there was a lot going on in Five Guns West as well. And when I first saw it, I'm just like, Roger Corman, he's known for his monster movies. Mm-hmm. He made a Western. Yeah. And he actually made a few Westerns. But that was the one that caught my interest, and I didn't expect anything great out of it. It was above average. Mm-hmm. And one famous filmmaker that worked with Roger Corman once said he made a $1 movie look like $10. Right. The guy knew how to use sets brilliantly. Sure. So,
and you look at some of his horror movies, using those sets over and over again. Right. It's especially the Edgar Allan Poe You know, I mean, it's literally the same exact setting with just a different story.
Yes.
You know, being played. You know, so but I mean, all those that's where I discovered Roger Corman. It was through those early Edgar Allan Poe adaptations, and I'm sure you realize now, Chris, like when I watch movies, especially growing up, I didn't watch them like per director.
Right.
So to me, watching those movies, they were like Vincent Price movies. It wasn't until I started reading like Fangoria that I realized who Roger Corman actually was, and stuff like that. So it's like I never like went and sought out Roger Corman movies. I looked at those series of movies as, all right, these are the Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe movies.
Right.
So.
And the interesting thing about Roger Corman is he made them for the big screen, but he didn't make them for like movie theaters. He made them for the drive-ins.
Yes.
That's one thing.
Or the art house, even to a degree.
I mean, his movies would get played in regular theaters, but he literally had an idea for the drive-ins because he thought at the time the younger audiences were underserved.
Right.
And he wanted to make movies they wanted to see. Mm-hmm. And he had a good knack for it too. I mean, a guy who's, his first directorial effort, he was only a few years older than Orson Welles when Orson Welles made Citizen Kane. And although he made no movie like Citizen Kane, his legacy, his legacy is just unfounded.
Yeah.
But like Ron Howard was saying, he used to go to the drive-ins all the time when he was, dating his now wife, and some movies were good, some movies are for making out, he said.
Right, yeah.
But and then when he got hired by Roger Corman, he realized, oh my God, I've seen most of these movies at the drive-in. Mm-hmm. He, like you, and like I didn't really start focusing on filmmakers until I saw a Sergio Leone movie. I was like, who made this?
Yeah.
But he didn't realize all those Edgar Allan Poe movies that he watched, and all of these like drive-in movies that he'd been going to for years. Most of them were made by Roger Corman. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. They were only like, I think the longest one was like 80-something minutes.
No, they're not long
double
at all.
bill. There was two movies they had to back, and I think he got kind of tired of that after a while.
Right.
Because he literally said, hey, instead of giving me like $15,000-$30,000 to do one black and white movie, why don't you just for two black and white movies, why don't you give me $15,000-$30,000 for one color movie? And that's when he started cranking out the Edgar Allan Poe movies, and those made him serious money.
Sure.
And let's think about it. Vincent Price, before those movies, it was like, he had done The Last Man on Earth. Well, The Last Man on Earth he hadn't done yet, but he'd done The House of Wax, and he was in a couple of horror movies, but he wasn't really known for horror movies at that time.
Yeah, no, the Edgar Allan Poe movies really put him on, cemented that horror icon status for him.
Because I've seen him in Leave Her to Heaven is a movie in the 40s where it was Technicolor masterpiece. And like, wow, Vincent Price is the ex-boyfriend in this movie. Mm-hmm. And he's not mean or vicious, but you kind of see a little streak of what would come later on in his Roger Corman productions. And then there was another movie where he was like the best friend of this guy, and it was like, wow, Vincent Price. In the 40s and 50s, he kind of just usually a supporting player. Once in a while he'd get into the William Castle productions, and they do a couple things like The Tingler and The House of Wax, like I mentioned. But it wasn't until Roger Corman, it seemed like it was just like boom, he became like a star.
Yeah,
and that was one thing that fascinated me over anything else Roger Corman did, was he made stars out of directors and actors. Mm-hmm. Amusing. I hadn't seen Little Shop of Horror in years, and just revisiting it's such a that movie he made. It took 5 days total. He said he planned everything Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then he shot the film Thursday and Friday. It was done by Saturday.
It's incredible.
And the movie, it's not like a masterpiece, but it's above average movie. Mm-hmm. It really is. And it's hilarious too. And You get an amazing, unforgettable cameo from Jack Nicholson in that movie.
Yeah.
And, Jack Nicholson is considered one of the greatest of all time. He's an icon, thanks to Roger Corman.
Well, yeah, that's where he got his. I mean, you talk about the filming back to back. He does The Raven and The Terror.
Same year.
Same sets. I mean, it literally could have been shot at the same time because both movies had Karloff and Jack Nicholson in it.
And he groomed another famous filmmaker on that, too, Peter Bogdanovich.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like his assistant.
Right. Yeah. And
to think, Peter Bogdanovich, just a run-of-the-mill assistant who got him coffee, did food runs and all that kind of stuff, who'd go on to be a legend himself.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. All these filmmakers he gave, their first shot, basically.
Right.
He literally gave them their first shot. But yeah, it's like the Raven is so interesting because you read the Edgar Allan Poe short,
right,
and you watch the movie. It's a dark comedy.
Yes, very.
That
much
was
so.
one thing a lot of people don't seem to. Some people do, but like he's noted for horror movies, genre movies, B movies. But the guy had a knack for comedy, from Little Shop of Horrors to the Raven. I mean, there's a lot of dark humor in there,
Absolutely.
And it is brilliant. I know Nicholson and Peter Lorre didn't get along too well, but
I didn't read anything about.
Well,
that.
there was some tension there apparently, but it made for a great
father-son who hated each other.
Right, right.
So
it made for a good dynamic between the two. But yeah, I guess they didn't get along that well on the set. But
oh wow,
but it's just interesting to see like a Jack Nicholson wearing like a Robin Hood type of cap throughout the whole.
You're right. Yeah,
The Raven is probably, out of all the Corman movies he directed, is probably my personal favorite because it's just and the effects are so like considered probably by today's standards very low budget, but it's just that's what gives it character. His special effects had a lot of character to it. You can have green screens, computers, do all that stuff now, but it's just old time movie magic,
Yeah, when you watch them, especially those Edgar Allan Poe, they had such a vibe to them.
They're very colorful too. A lot of people don't know, or a lot of people don't pay attention to that. I think they do now, but back then they were kind of just okay. These are B movies, which they were,
right? But
they were above average, and the sets were amazing. The cinematography, it's like he had a knack for color too,
that's it's probably why I love Mask of the Red Death so much. I mean, the colors in that movie just hit you in the face with all the different representing all the different diseases and plagues and stuff like that. And it's all color coded, and it's just like incredible to watch. It's just visually just takes you. And same thing with Pit and the Pendulum. Pit and the Pendulum had a really unique way of how he used color in that movie.
Yes,
it was all dark, but then it was backlit by certain colors for certain moods, and blues and greens and reds. It was just I don't know. He just had like this psychedelic knack to. I don't know if he was a hippie at all or experimenting, but I mean, he definitely had caught that psychedelic vibe and really used it to his advantage in these movies. And again, going back to the Raven, give a guy like Boris Karloff at the end of his career, his last couple really good performances. I mean, It's remarkable to see, with the Raven and then the Terror, and then obviously you went on to do Targets.
Well, and it's interesting. You get like a bunch of the Terror in Targets.
Well, that was the thing, because the Terror was his last movie in Targets,
right?
Which is interesting. Corman let him use it, which was cool.
Yeah, well, apparently. Karloff had like two days left on his contract with Corman, and he told Bogdanovich, "Hey, can you use 40 minutes of the Terror and like take your? Do you have any script ready?" And I have something. Okay, take him and use 40 minutes there, and you've got an 80-minute movie.
Yeah.
So he really he not only like pushed these filmmakers to be creative and stuff, but he also like really forced them to think on their feet and I mean, you look at Bogdanovich after Targets, it's like, The Last Picture Show is considered one of the greatest films ever made, and Paper Moon, and it's all because of Corman. He worked with he was his assistant, and then he was on the first unit, and then he did whatever Corman wanted him to do. And when Corman asked him, "Hey, got Karloff for a couple extra days, just do something with it."
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant film.
Yeah, he really did. I mean, how can you, that's taking advantage of a legend. And, and again, to give, someone a Karloff's stature, I mean, he was only a year or two away from his passing.
Right.
To give him that sort of respect and nod, and really cool and really, awesome for them to do that.
Oh, for sure.
But before going any further, for those who've never seen them, I think if you're gonna watch anything from Roger Corman, back to the Edgar Allan Poe stuff, House of Usher was the first one. Pit and the Pendulum, The Raven, and The Mask of the Red Death. I mean, you can't get any better than that. And all starring Vincent Price. It's just, there's such good iconic movies,
and they were done literally within like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
all these movies.
Yeah, the last one being
right
Mask of the Red Death. The first one was House of Usher in 1960, and then the last one of the Poe movies, Mask of the Red Death, 64.
Right.
So within 4 years, you got these 4 incredible movies.
And again, but before that,
he was making everything else in between.
Yeah,
he was putting out so much content.
Well, that was the thing. It's called content now.
Yeah,
back then
or movies. Yeah,
but he did like a lot of sci-fi movies too. Like his very first sci-fi film that he directed, The Day the World Ended. Did you ever see that one?
I have not seen that one. No.
You really should. I mean, it's. Again, Richard Denning was like the go-to guy, in those sci-fi movies.
Right. Yep.
The good-looking scientist and Mr. Know-It-All.
Yep.
But it's just, post-apocalyptic sci-fi film, these guys, this father and daughter live in this house kind of barricaded away. It seemed like some sort of nuclear blast took out the whole world, and there's these random humans that have survived, and of course some of them are jealous, and it was again before George Romero made Night of the Living Dead, so I mean they're all basically living under one roof, and of course they can't live in the same place together, and it's just a lot of tension, but it was interesting. It's a very interesting movie, and it could have easily been just dismissed, but the material, he rose above the material with it, and he made it very interesting. And Swamp Women, that was more of a adventure film.
The Undead. I mean,
the Undead.
There's another good one.
That was tremendous. Again, it was above average. I couldn't believe it. You think with a guy who cranked out 8 movies in 1 year in 1957 that there would be like a dud in there. But they were all really above average movies. They really were.
And what a story. I mean, just, the quick synopsis of The Undead,
right.
A beautiful woman sent back in time via hypnosis
I know.
to the Middle Ages, and she's being tried as a witch now.
Right.
I mean,
just the
such
plot.
a cool concept.
It's just a plot. The plot, you could definitely tell Hammer was inspired by some of his work.
Oh,
too,
sure.
I mean, that kind of stuff, they don't have that kind of plot in movies today. I mean, it's just so interesting.
Yeah.
If I read that plot, I'd be like, well, I want to at least watch this movie and see how it is. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, in the same year that he did The Undead, Carnival Rock, where he had, the platters in there and stuff, that was an interesting movie. And you had this guy fall in love with a nightclub singer, and however, the singer is in love with a businessman gangster, and after the gangster wins control of the club, the previous owner begins to perform comic routines between the acts at the nightclub. It's like,
Right.
it's like, what an incredibly strange yet interesting movie. And he also had the Platters in a movie called Rock All Night, and yeah, there's like 3 or 4 songs in the movie, but it's a crime drama, for crying out loud. Mm-hmm. It literally is a crime drama, you know? And then he delved into the gangster film and made Charles Bronson more known.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that. I was just looking at that movie as well. Machine Gun Kelly, you know, not the pop rock rap guy,
whatever he is.
Yeah, whatever he is, the tattooed guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what a lot of people think of now when they see Machine Gun Kelly. But you actually have this gangster film, I guess a real life gangster, come to find out. But again, a very small budget, and Charles Bronson. You think this is like a James Cagney, Humphrey Bogart movie, and it does have a vibe of White Heat, where the gangster is more vulnerable. In this movie, he takes the White Heat character that James Cagney made very famous, you know, top of the world,
right.
Made it, Ma. But he makes him even more vulnerable in this movie. Mm-hmm. And it's like the women are kind of Lady Macbeth-ish, you know, encouraging the violence. Be strong, be tough. And Charles Bronson he gets tired of it at the end.
Yeah.
What an interesting change of pace for a gangster film. Mm-hmm. I mean, how often do you even see that in a gangster movie where the gangster's actually, you know, tired of being the tough guy all the time?
Yeah. I
mean, for 1958, that's very unusual.
Absolutely.
And that could be one reason why people don't talk about it as much. But you got to see Charles Bronson flex more than just his muscles in that one. He actually showed he could act a little bit too.
Yeah. Because
let's face it, before that, he was known for the hulking presence in House of Wax.
Right.
So I still don't know I got to read more about how he got the name Bronson, but it's Brzezinski, not Bronson.
Right.
But yeah, it's just when people just think of the horror movies, he did so much more than that.
He did.
And that's what I'm showing right now. It's like he did westerns, he did gangster films, crime dramas, and you could call some of these rock movies musicals in a way. And
right.
There's always comedy in there too. So, I mean, he did something for everybody. And again, it was all targeted towards the young audience.
Mm-hmm. And, and where I'm going to bring it back to is, again, if you're someone like me who didn't really watch movies, per director, I mean, staples in the horror genre, like Dementia 13.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's such a classic, and then you realize, all right, it's another Roger Corman. But, I mean, again, awesome plots. The scheming widow hatches a bold plan to acquire her late husband's inheritance, unaware she's being targeted by an axe murderer who lurks in the family's estate.
And that was directed by Coppola.
Yeah.
That was the interesting thing. He was making a movie overseas with Coppola. I think he goes, hey, I think it was either Dublin or somewhere over in that area, in that region. He goes, I have $30,000. Can you write and direct a horror film for me? It's like, imagine being put on the spot, but Coppola, being the brilliant screenwriter he is, I mean, guy's won a ton of awards just for his screenwriting alone. So that was his very first movie.
Yeah.
And look at that. He would go on to write a script for Patton. Mm-hmm. He get fired. He got fired, and the most memorable part of Patton was Coppola's monologue at the beginning.
Yeah,
that was what was left of Coppola's script in Patton, and it's the part everyone memorized. Mm-hmm. So, and on from there.
I mean,
Coppola had
you're talking.
He still made Megapolis, his new movie, $120 million movie, self-financed. Mm-hmm. So it's like there's still the Roger Corman influence in Coppola as well.
Yeah.
Because no studio wants to touch the Coppola movie now. Mm-hmm. There's already people saying it's horrible, it's terrible, but he doesn't care. He goes, like literally he was at the Cannes Film Festival. Mm-hmm. Coppola said, most people will go be on their deathbeds regretting not doing that thing. I will not be that guy because I did it. Mm. But not everyone has 120 million. But
just throw away. Yeah.
But he invested in the wine and he used all that money to put it towards his passion project, and hopefully we get to see it here in the States. Mm-hmm. But anyways, I mean, it's just that was the kind of guy Roger Corman was too. The Intruder. Mm-hmm. Again, Corman known for all these horror movies, these B pictures. He makes a serious, passionate film called The Intruder with William Shatner, and it's all about racism.
Yeah.
The Ku Klux Klan. There's hangings, floggings, burning of crosses. That's pretty intense even for a Roger Corman movie. And AIP didn't want to touch it, so him and his brother literally... they scrapped up all their savings and everything, and I'm sure a house was put on reverse mortgage or something
right, yeah.
at some point as collateral. The movie was pretty intense, and Roger Corman himself even said, after making and seeing The Intruder, I realized I forgot to make the movie entertaining.
Yeah.
Because there were like riots and fights that broke out at the small screenings that movie had.
Yeah.
I mean, he touched a nerve. It was a movie he felt very strongly about, and what a different role for William Shatner too.
Sure. Absolutely.
Again, William Shatner would go on to bigger and better things, Hello, Star Trek.
I mean, hey, he's still riding that the Enterprise, and well into his 90s with that, so I mean.
Yeah, and he's only a few years younger than Roger Corman too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was just again, I'm also like acknowledging his horror movies and the impact he had on that genre, but I'm talking about he's had so many genres that he's dabbed his hands into.
Well, of course. I mean, again, movies that you might not expect him to be attached to, like we're talking about gangster movies. I mean, the iconic St. Valentine's Day Massacre,
right, from
'67. I mean, it's he had his hand in this. So the Dunwich Horror. Executive producer, 19. That was another horror classic. I'm going through his list here, and I'm movies I've seen that I still didn't realize that he had a hand in. Lady Frankenstein, 1971.
Yeah, the Italian.
Yeah. I mean, again, for we'll go right into the late 70s with something that most of our listeners who aren't fans of classic horror but more modern, Piranha.
Yeah.
I mean...
Well, which at the time was kind of dismissed as a Jaws copycat, which...
It was.
It was. It was. He even said it was.
Yeah.
But he also wanted to... Again, I mentioned it earlier, but according to Corman, Monster from the Ocean Floor, his very first time as a producer was... He thought that Spielberg borrowed a lot from that.
Right.
So... Again, inspiring Spielberg, and
sure.
Another thing a lot of people don't give him credit for, his run with American International is amazing. I mean, 55 directed films, 385 produced films, all the way through 2008. Let's not forget the U.S. distribution of foreign directors. He started his own production company. Basically, he got tired of AIP after a while because it's like people telling him what to do, and he just wanted to do his own thing. Not only did he want to help young directors, help mentor them, but he also really loved foreign films. And someone asked him, why are you bringing in all these Bergman, Fellini films? Because I like them.
Right. Yeah. Hey.
Very simple.
Yeah.
Very simple. And remember, we were talking about The Wicker Man. Someone sent a copy, the longer version of The Wicker Man. He could have sent it to anyone in the United States, but it was sent to Corman. Mm-hmm. Corman had it for many years. That was how much of an impact he had, you know? Mm-hmm. Let's talk about how he mentored and gave a start to young film directors. We mentioned Coppola already with Dementia 13, Martin Scorsese, Peter Bogdanovich, we've talked about already, Joe Dante, John Sayles, James Cameron. I mean, Jack Nicholson was in several of his films.
Yep.
And look at what Jack Nicholson went on to do. Peter Fonda, just like a few years before Easy Rider, he was in a couple of his movies. And you were talking about his experimenting in drugs.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a second, because
right.
He had Peter Fonda in a couple of movies actually. The Wild Angels, which was, he started this motorcycle movie craze based on Hell's Angels, kind of. Hell's Angels was mentioned and they used the Hell's Angels bikes, for crying out loud.
Right.
The movie The Trip, because Roger Corman's like, I want to make a movie about LSD. And I think Jack Nicholson or Peter Fonda, one of them said, well, you actually got to do LSD with what the material you've got here. So he literally experimented with LSD, but he said he had a wonderful trip. So he goes, if I did my vision of LSD from the way I saw it, the movie would have been propaganda film for LSD.
Right.
So The Trip was the name of that one. And I saw clips of it, and it's trippy, to say the least.
Yeah.
But that was another thing. American International Pictures, I know he really wanted to do Easy Rider with Peter Fonda, because Dennis Hopper. But Dennis Hopper, at that point, this was before Blue Velvet, when he had changed his ways.
Right.
He was a more calm, collective guy. Back then, he was a wild, crazy dude. He did all sorts of drugs. And Easy Rider was his first time directing a movie. AIP was kind of like, they were becoming more conservative. They're like, well, he's kind of problematic. What are you going to do? They tried to make a deal if something fell through with Dennis Hopper not being able to direct. And Dennis Hopper was upset about it. Peter Fonda didn't like it. And Roger Corman didn't like it either. So they ended up netting a deal with Columbia Pictures. But that probably was another reason he eventually just went on his own.
Right.
Easy Rider, because of the movies Peter Fonda did with Roger Corman.
He influenced just about anything and everything you can think of in the film industry.
Right.
From creative to budget.
Right.
I mean, the guy he was all over the place. He probably could get, would have had credited for starting the whole Marvel craze, because he originally was in the late 80s trying to get a Spider-Man going. He did Fantastic Four, and Fantastic Four got shelved, which is, like I said at the beginning of the show, is now being petitioned to be re-released. I mean, the guy had his hand in every genre.
Right.
Every little thing. As those, like the superhero movies through the early 90s and stuff like that, he was constantly approaching studios being like, hey, I can make this for half the budget that you're already, He was trying, so, I mean, he was just everywhere.
I mentioned Scorsese. Boxcar Bertha was his movie for Roger Corman. Now, Scorsese mentions that Corman originally wanted him to do a blaxploitation film.
Oh, right.
Yeah. He had an idea for Mean Streets way back after he did Who's That Knocking at My Door in the 1967.
Yeah.
So he had an idea for Mean Streets, and Roger Corman's like, hey, could you take this story and just make it all black people? And Scorsese's like, I don't know how to do that. So Corman's like, well, I got this other project that you can direct, and it was Boxcar Bertha, which it's considered Scorsese's least film, his worst film, even though there's a lot of good stuff in there. I don't know how you feel about watching sex scenes in movies, but literally David Carradine and Barbara Hershey were really having sex.
Good for them.
Yeah, well,
good for them.
Literally, Scorsese, I don't know if he had an idea they were doing it, but he filmed it like a voyeur of sorts. Yeah, the movie was considered a disaster, and John Cassavetes called it crap, literally. But again, a year later, Mean Streets came out, and that was an interesting thing, working with Ron Howard. Grand Theft Auto, Ron Howard was, he wanted all these extras for the big climax. Ron Howard's like, can you get me some more extras? He goes, Ron, if you do this well, you'll never have to work for me again. You only got 75 extras. He made it work, and, Ron Howard did not
went on to be Ron Howard.
He did not work with Roger Corman again. Talk about a compliment,
Sure.
It sounded like an insult in a way. You'll never work for me again.
Right.
But that's his way of encouraging. And look at it, Oscar-winning filmmaker. You know, it's like who would have thought? Who would have thought Ron Howard, who directed A Beautiful Mind, Apollo 13, did Grand Theft Auto?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that also goes to show where Roger Corman he kind of knew his place in the movie world.
Right.
He knew he wasn't going to be making the big blockbusters.
Well, he didn't want. Yeah, he literally said $200 million to make a movie. He goes, and most of that cost does not go into the film. It goes to the producers and stuff. I don't want to make a movie like that.
Yeah.
You know, $200 million, I could make a bunch of movies.
Yeah.
I could donate it to a good cause, he says.
Right.
I mean, and all these other filmmakers, though, that he groomed, they went on to make these multi-$100 million films.
Sure.
All of them. Even Scorsese's done it twice recently with The Irishman and Killers of the Flower Moon. And Joe Dante, after he did Piranha, Gremlins.
Yeah. Again, huge movie. He was so influential, and we could probably go on for hours and hours.
Right.
Every little thing he had his hand in or influence on. I mean, the guy was working right up until he died and involved with something.
And I know we're kind of jumping all over the place with Roger Corman. It's just we're just so excited. And again, I was never excited about Roger Corman until, like you, I discovered, he helped out Martin Scorsese, he helped out Jonathan Demme, he helped out Coppola, he helped out Bogdanovich. If it wasn't for Roger Corman, where would these guys be?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Exactly.
I mean, they're talented enough that they might have found their way, but I mean, would we have had A Beautiful Mind from Ron Howard or Apollo 13 or any of these movies?
Again, even Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Like with all the great work he ended up going on to do.
Right.
I mean, he gets
Peter Fonda.
He gets his first acting gig with Roger Corman and taking a chance on him. And I'm one of the Nicholson biographies I read, like he wasn't even trying to get into acting. He was just looking for work. He was fresh out of the Air Force and he just stumbled upon a movie set.
And look at Sylvester Stallone, Death Race 2000.
Yeah.
Where would he have been as confident to do Rocky if it wasn't for a low budget film like that?
Sure.
Weapons on Cars. George Miller, do you think his Mad Max movies would have had the same impact without Death Race 2000?
Right. Well, it's.
I mean, we could go on and on and on.
Right. Sure.
Because it's all connected. The monster on the ocean floor there to Jaws, and because even though Spielberg didn't work directly with Roger Corman, he must have seen some of Roger Corman's movies. He must have.
Looking through that list of hundreds of movies, it's like you've. If you're listening to this, you've seen a Roger Corman movie, even if you don't know you have.
Right.
It's.
And by the way, this is Scared for Reals.
Yep.
Subscribe to us on YouTube if you like what you're hearing, because I always forget to plug that. Subscribe. So you get a notification when we upload our episodes. And this is just like most people binge watch shows, but this past week after Roger Corman died, I'm like, okay, I know he directed movies, and I'm like, okay, I've seen this one. I've seen like 4 or 5 of them, but I wanted to see his other movies because I know he did more than just horror movies.
Right.
And all the stuff I found was very fascinating.
Yeah.
It was above average. I really didn't expect to like the movies as much as I did. They're fun. I could revisit every single movie I saw this week again. And of course, I do have to give the Pendulum another shot because, again, I love the swinging of the pendulum, but I had a hard time with the rest of the movie. But I got to give that movie another shot because, The Raven is still my absolute favorite directed Roger Corman film.
Right.
So, and of course, I'm a huge Scorsese fan, so there's a special place in my heart for Boxcar Bertha as well. And a bad Scorsese movie. Right. It's like a great movie for somebody else. I'm serious about that. If that's the least of his movies in his filmography, But
Right.
anyway, I mean, again, if
if listening, if you haven't really delved into Roger Corman, all the Edgar Allan Poe movies. Again, my favorite's Mask of the Red Death, and then Pit and the Pendulum. But the House of Usher is so good.
all of his
so
Poe,
good.
They're very colorful too. I
Yes.
said it before, but
Yeah.
it amazes me watching The Raven again. I hadn't
Yeah.
seen The Raven in almost 2 decades, and it's such a colorful film.
Yeah.
The whole sorcerer duel at the end kind of reminds me of Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, John Carpenter, he didn't work with Corman directly, but he
took
saw
notes.
all of his films.
Yeah, he took notes.
And you see Roger Corman in all of Carpenter's films.
Yeah. So, I mean, what a legacy, what a career. There's so much you can say about Roger Corman. So, going forward, I know we will. And I encourage everybody to just look up his content, keep his legacy alive. I mean, it's never going to die because he had his hand in everything. But that's the best way to celebrate a man of his caliber. Is just to continue to celebrate his work, all genres of work, and appreciate all the wonderful art and good times he's given us.
Oh, yeah. And you can watch his films so easily. Tubi has at least 20 of them.
Yeah,
at least.
And every Halloween, guys, TMC, Turner Classic Movies, that's all they play. If it's not the Hammer movies, it's the Roger Corman, Edgar Allan Poe movies. They're everywhere, literally. Check them out.
And not only that, some of the boutique labels. I mean, Kino Lorber did a beautiful restoration of The Raven.
Yep.
And I know there's tons and tons of stuff that's been redone in different boutique labels. The Raven just comes to mind, but just like a few days ago, there's a bunch of Corman's movies, and I think The Terror's amongst them, is going to be 4K remastered in theaters at some point, either by the end of this year or next year or something. They're taking most of his 60s films and they're going to restore them. They give them the 4K treatment and they're going to be put in theaters. We live near Albany, so the chances of us getting those movies here are very slim. But if you're in a driving distance and you see a Roger Corman film playing on the big screen, you just need to go.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, they don't show his movies in drive-ins anymore, which is a shame. There is like out in Cobleskill, I believe, they still show some of, like, they call them Karloff triple features, but all 3 of the movies were Corman movies.
Right.
They do those around Halloween time.
Yeah.
But I would love to see some of these movies on the big screen. I mean, talk about the colors popping.
Sure.
4K restoration.
Yeah.
The Raven. The Terror. All those movies would pop.
Like I said, Mask of Red Death. It's all about the colors.
And the Mask of Red Death actually got a nice Blu-ray restoration too.
Yeah.
Not too long ago. So you can find a lot of the if you are a collector of physical media like I am, they're easy to seek out certain ones. Shout Factory is Piranha and several others.
Yep.
Even though technically that's a Joe Dante film, I mean, that's definitely Corman written all over it.
Right.
The famous publicity shot of Corman inside the mouth of the piranha. But yeah, do yourself a favor and seek out Roger Corman films. What would you say is your favorite Roger Corman?
It's so tough. I gotta go Mask of the Red Death. Whatever it is about that movie, I love it. It's creepy. The way it's shot so beautifully.
Yeah.
Vincent Price he's a monster in it. Not like like creature raw monster. Like he's just so powerful in his performance in that movie.
And you could tell he relished his role. Like I know a lot of people like the Last Man on Earth, but I felt he was kind of bland in that.
Yeah.
Whereas when he was with Corman, it was like, man, you could tell he relished it. Yes. Yeah. And that would lead on to the Witchfinders General and all sorts of
exactly. And again,
Dr. Phibes and
again, if I had to pick one, I'd pick Mask of Red Death. But again, all those Edgar Allan Poe movies.
Yeah.
They are just fantastic. And it starts with House of Usher. So again, it's,
well, and that was the thing
Yeah.
when the producers at American International said there's no creature in the House of Usher. He goes, the creature.
Yeah.
Or he goes, the creature is the house.
yes, yes,
The house
yes.
itself is the
Right.
monster
Yeah.
in the House of Usher. So, we could go on and on about again, 385 produced films
Yeah.
from 1954 through 2008. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I mean, his New World Pictures, that's the one after Easy Rider. That was the name of his personal film company from 1970 to 1983, 13 years. And again, in that time frame, you saw the rise of all of his apprentices, if
Sure.
you will,
Again, the only way to really left to say and to wrap this up is thank you to
Yeah.
Roger Corman, for all the entertainment and the memories, and again, the best way to keep a guy alive, a legend like this is alive, is to keep watching his stuff, rediscovering his stuff,
Right.
and
again, it's out there. It's so easy to watch Roger Corman films.
Yes.
Again, I mentioned Tubi. I know
Freebie's got a whole bunch of
Freebie?
stuff. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Freebie. Explain Freebie a little bit. I'm not familiar
Freebie
with it.
is the free streaming station from Amazon.
Oh, okay.
All right, it's totally free. You don't have to have an Amazon account or anything to do it.
Maybe that's why they don't advertise it.
Yeah, well, so but they do have a lot of really good content. I mean, this has nothing to do with Roger Corman, but they have the Universal Monster Station,
Yeah.
where it's 24 hours a day, all of Universal's horror movies.
So it's like a TV.
It's like a
it's
TV.
like all these channels.
Yes.
So Roger Corman, does he have his own channel?
He doesn't have his own channel, but they do play a bunch of Roger Corman movies.
Right. They could easily have a Roger Corman
Yeah,
channel.
and again, you put any of his movies in a search bar, you're going to find something.
Oh gosh, I know.
So whether it's Freebie, Tubi, Amazon, HBO Max has the Turner Classic Movies
Yeah.
link to it. So I mean, there's all sorts of stuff there.
And again, it's easy to find. And if you're a Blu-ray physical media collector, Shout Factory, I mentioned them. Kino Lorber has some of his movies. Just search for different boutique labels. I mean, you could even search in Amazon if you're into that. I don't like how Amazon packages movies. Diabolic DVD is the way to go if you're looking for a bunch of different types of labels without having to worry about if you want to import a Roger Corman film that's overseas. Mm-hmm. You can do that through Diabolic DVD, and you don't have to pay like $20 to $30 for shipping.
Right. Yeah.
So I highly recommend. I mean, I know Jesse and the crew at Diabolic DVD have tons and tons of Roger Corman films. It's easy to find, thankfully, because his legacy lives on, and people still are being influenced by him. Fast and Furious 11 is being made right now.
Right.
And again, that's because of Roger Corman. We salute Roger Corman again. What is your favorite era of Roger Corman? Do you like his films as a director? Do you like his films as a producer? Or just tell us your favorite film that he was involved with that you liked. You can comment on YouTube. We're also on Facebook, X, Instagram. Again, we're at Scared for Reels. Those are our handles. Just let us know what you think, and don't forget to click the subscribe button. I forget to say it all the time. We forget to say it. But yeah, please subscribe. We appreciate all the subscribers so far, and it's the best way so you don't miss out on any of our content. We do content. Roger Corman made movies.
Yes.
Right? So just remember, movies are not content. Not in my opinion. That's a discussion for another day. We got to bring your brother in here again so we can talk about what is content. Roger Corman, let us know what you think about Roger Corman, and we'll see you next time.